Almost 1 year since the start of the U.S.-led campaign against ISIS, President Obama says the United States still does not have a, quote, complete strategy to defeat the terror group. The president made the admission at the G7 summit in Germany and shifted some of the blame onto Iraqi leaders.
When a finalized plan is presented to me by the Pentagon, then I will share it with the American people. It's not, we don't yet have a complete strategy because it requires commitments on the part of the Iraqis as well about how recruitment takes place, how that training takes place. And so the details of that are not yet worked out.
We are joined now by our senior national security analyst, Juan Zarate, who's in Washington. Juan, when you hear these words, how much does that concern you?
Well, it's troubling on a couple of scores, Jeff. First and foremost, the reality is we've had to rely on the idea of Iraqi troops taking back territory from the Islamic State and acting as our proxy on the ground, given that the U.S. coalition has been largely an air coalition. And so the reality that the president has just articulated that there really is not a clear strategy as to how those troops are going to get trained and in place to take back territory and to keep it from the Islamic State, I think is a major question. I think it also then raises a broader question, Jeff, as to whether or not we have reassessed our strategy meticulously and well enough. What is our strategy moving forward, given that the Islamic State has not only proven resilient, but it's taken back Ramadi, continues to maintain momentum in places like Syria, is attracting foreign recruits, and still retains hold of the second largest city in Iraq, Mosul, with no end in sight. And so to me, it's a troubling statement because it reflects not only that we don't have a way forward on the training component, which is critical for the proxy dimension of the strategy, but also the question of the larger strategy. Do we have one, and will it work? And the president's comments, I think, open that question up quite explicitly.
Juan, if the U.S. doesn't have a full strategy for training Iraqi troops, what have they been doing with Iraqi troops?
Well, I think what the president is reflecting is the reality that we had plans to train and a strategy to train, but that the reality on the ground has not met those expectations. And a couple of things have happened. One is the enemy has proven more resilient and more aggressive than we thought. And so it's been difficult for the Iraqi military to counteract, for example, the offensive in Ramadi. Secondly, we just have not gotten the number of troops ready to train that we've anticipated. The president said, look, there's training capacity, but we haven't seen the recruits necessary to train. Third, there hasn't been the real political component here, which is the necessary coordination and coalition of Sunnis and Shia within Iraq to bring the troops and the military leadership to the fight. And so I think the president's reflecting the fact that our plans and strategy from the get-go to amplify training has not met the realities on the ground, and it's a major problem and divide, and that's expressed in what he's said at the press conference.
Juan, is the ultimate difference maker U.S. boots on the ground?
Well, I think at some point it's going to have to be more sort of qualified troops on the ground. Whether or not they're U.S. troops or coalition troops is a different debate. But certainly there has to be more qualified troops working with the Iraqis to take back territory. I think a real question here, Jeff, in terms of the strategy is, what's the timetable? Because if we're talking about not even having a strategy to train the Iraqis to take back territory, when is that going to happen? When does territory get taken back? When is the assault on Mosul? These are key and fundamental questions as the Islamic State continues to grow and to attract attention around the world. And to a certain extent, if you want to accelerate all of this, you're going to have to consider, I think, at some point, either special operations forces or others on the ground to steel the spine of the Iraqis and to take back territory.
Juan Zarate, always good to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff.